This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Bradley, we've been doing these internet interviews for nearly a quarter of a century, which makes me feel very old, about one topic that always seems to hit it, the target for our viewers and listeners, is how do you stop being the startup entrepreneur and transition into becoming a full-time real executive? You have some ideas on that topic, I understand.
I certainly do, because that was absolutely the journey that I went on myself. And so I think it's paramount that obviously many other people have experienced that. Of course, when I went through it, you don't think at the time that many other people are experiencing the same thing that you do. Mine was in 2015. I got my business started in 2010. So I'm 5 years into the business. And I really had built the business off of my back. I picked up hard work from my father, and I felt like I had sales skills from my previous careers. And that's exactly what was needed to give that business some lift. And as we share with people today, I think that business began to plateau when we hit $500,000, $600,000 in top line revenue. And what I've come to find out is I think that plateau begins to happen for a lot of businesses around that $500,000 mark, maybe even 300,000, to where you've been able to be the center of gravity for your business, but then the business begins to plateau. And so I had to go through that on my own transformation. But unfortunately, mine came from having to have a health scare. I was experiencing panic attacks. I did not know that that's what that was. I thought I was having some legitimate heart issues at 34 years old, but it was really just simply because I was working all the time. I went and saw a cardiologist and did the whole 9 yards. And ultimately, I found myself in Toronto at a program called Strategic Coach. I was sitting next to an entrepreneur that I'd never met before, and he had done incredibly well in his profession. His profession was not too distant from the one that I was in. And he shared something with me that I had heard for years. So it wasn't a novel concept at all. And he said, look, I just got my business out of my head. I documented systems and processes. And I said something smart back to him, Doug, of like, you got to be kidding me. I've heard this for years. There's got to be more to it. But the difference is he actually showed me. He actually pulled back the curtain and showed me what they had done to be able to build the $40 million company that they had built. And that was the thing that ultimately changed kind of everything for me. And specifically, the first step that I took was actually in a mindset shift. I actually had really a mindset shift or an identity shift, meaning I saw myself differently. Instead of seeing myself as the rainmaker of my business, I saw myself as the architect of my business. And everything kind of began to change from that point forward.
Wow. Well, have you seen that in other businesses at exactly that same point? I.e., is there something you say, you see this, and then you do that?
Yes. I was on the phone with one of our clients yesterday, and they are at about a $750,000 run rate. And he has really probably beaten the odds in terms of what he's able to do literally off of his back. He is without question, the rainmaker of that business. He produces 90% of the sales for that business. And he finally has started to recognize that, you know what? I think I could see me getting this business to maybe 800,000, a little bit more. But if I actually truly want to scale, if I want to say like get to 1.5 million or 2 million, I have no chance. And so we went through the math of that, and he said, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no way. And so really he's at a point, he's at a crossroads, and his crossroads is, I think, no different than the crossroads of another business owner. At some point, either he's going to say, I think I'm just good with where I'm at. I just want to stay where I'm at. Or if he says, I truly want to scale, and by the way, we use that as an acronym. Well, you and I can get into that if you would like to. If he actually truly wants to scale, then he has to begin to make some changes. And yesterday he said, I'm ready to make the changes. I'm ready to make the changes. I'm ready to actually see the business differently because I truly do want to get this thing to a couple of $1 million. And I realize and recognize that there's no chance it gets there simply with me doing the way that I'm doing it. So Marshall Goldsmith says, what got you here is not going to get you there. And so he's really at a point. And I say that, Douglas, to say that, like, I gave him credit. I said, hey, listen, you've gotten this thing to $750,000 and like you're almost at $1 million. Most people can't get it to $1 million at this point. Like, I really complimented him, but he also said, I'm tired. I'm worn out. I can't keep these hours up that I'm working. Like, I really do want to make a change. And I shared with him and repeated my story and said, I've been there. I got my business to about 600,000 before I realized, like, I've capped out. I've got to make a change.
Well, if you were to delay or just not even do that, what are the dangers that you'll encounter?
Well, I mean, mine was a health scare legitimately because I mean, I'm just not one, and most business owners are so driven and ambitious that they're not going to accept mediocrity. And so I wasn't going to accept mediocrity. And so either I was going to have a health scare or have a legitimate health issue, or I was going to leave entrepreneurship. I actually considered going back into the corporate world. Genuinely, I was so frustrated that I said, why am I doing this? I'm not making the kind of money I know I can make. I could just go in the corporate world and have more freedom and flexibility than I do now. But fortunately, I did not do that. I said, wait a minute, I think there's got to be a different way. And indeed, I started to make the changes for me personally. And so I think that, you know, all the way from some legitimate health concerns, I think would happen. One, two, some people will just quit and wave the white flag. Or I think number three, the business is just not going to grow. Like it's just going to end up, you just end up hitting a glass ceiling.
Are you talking about just simply, delegating duties that you've accumulated under your own belt to other people?
I think that we actually talk about everybody we work with does 300,000 to 3 million. And so we split that in two different stages. 300,000 to $1 million, there are some problems and some challenges you're going to face to get that business from 300,000 to $1 million. And then those challenges begin to change whenever you cross $1 million and you're trying to scale to 3 million. So if you'd like, I'll share what I think the two differences are.
Yes, please.
Number one, if you're in that 300,000 to $1 million range, the very first skill set and the problem that you're going to encounter is you have to do what I did, which is get the business out of your head. You have to learn how to document systems and processes, and then you can delegate them. This is important. Everybody talks about delegation, but the team cannot read your mind. They can read a document and follow a process. They can read a document and follow a process. They cannot read your mind. And so you have to be able to learn how to get this business out of your head and into documentation so that the team can follow it. The thing that got the business to 300,000 is probably off of your back, but that's not the thing that's ultimately going to get the thing to $1 million, let alone 3. And so the first challenge you have to face is actual documentation of some of your key systems and processes. And I just want to touch on this. I did not say that you document everything in the business. A lot of times what people hear when I say that, and they internalize, which is why I'm calling it out specifically, is I'm going to McDonald's my business. No, you're not McDonald's. You're not McDonald's. You're a small business, okay? McDonald's is one of the biggest companies in the world. They can do that. That's not how they got started. They started with some key systems and processes. They documented those, and then they began to document the rest of them. That's important. You don't have to go through and document everything, You need to document a handful of ones. Honestly, the first one I would start with, how do you acquire a customer? That's it. Like that's the first one. Every business has to acquire new customers. Yours does, mine does, anybody listen to this. So the very first one that I would document is that one right there. How do we acquire a customer in the business? Typically, that's going to be called your sales playbook. Okay, second problem. Now, what happens when you're at 1 million? Well, just by the nature of how many team members you probably have, we have a metric called revenue per person. On the low end, you probably are doing $100,000 revenue per person. Ideally, you're doing 250,000 revenue per person. Okay, so at 1 million, you have at somewhere between 4 and 10 team members, just based off that math. When your business gets north of 6 team members on your staff that you pay, whether they're contractors or whether they're W-2 employees is really irrelevant. They're part of your team. You can't have everybody report directly to you. So now you've introduced, for the first time, your first layer of management and leadership. And so now you're not leading every single person on the team. You actually now have the skill set of, oh, wait a minute, I actually now have to lead other leaders. And that's a totally different skill set of what it takes to be able to scale to $3 million. Those are the two big challenges and the problems that are faced to go from 3 to 1 and then 1 to 3.
You have developed something that you call BlueprintOS. What is that?
BlueprintOS stands for a Blueprint Operating System. It is our set of playbooks that we give our members that together form a comprehensive operating system. If you heard what I said earlier, I said that you need to transition from the Rainmaker to becoming the architect of your business. What do architects use? They use blueprints. And so you have to design and install a blueprint operating system so that the business begins to run and grow without you. Almost every business owner got into business for some level of freedom, flexibility, and income potential. And I believe that the path to that is to create an operating system that runs independently of you.
You are also getting pretty well known with your own podcast. Tell us about that.
Our podcast is called Above the Business. We love Gerber's content, his book, E-Myth. He told us to work on the business, not in the business. I love that. We agree. We just think that there's a third dimension that you also can be, and that is above the business, not just work on it, but sometimes you need to work above it. You need to see things from above the business, not just on it, and certainly not just in it. And I want to be very clear, is I think that there are times I'm very much in the business. I'm very much in the business. There are times I'm very much on the business, and then there are times that I'm above the business. So we believe on, in, and above is the right methodology. So that's why my podcast is called Above the Business.
Have you gotten a lot of reaction to that? Our understanding is the answer to that is yes, but tell us about it.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, a lot of people really have shared that resonates, and then it brings up some really good discussion points of what does it mean to actually work above the business.
Almost angelic in a way, I would guess. Bradley, tell our listeners and viewers where they can get more information about you.
If they would like to get started, we've got a starter kit. We call it the Rainmaker to Architect Starter Kit. And in there is a number of free downloads along with some training from me, how to use the asset. Sometimes there's nothing worse than getting a free PDF or Excel spreadsheet, but you don't know how to use the thing. And so we've put together, a lot of people ask us, okay, that sounds really great. Where do I get started? And so from that, I just said, well, I'm just going to create the starter kit. I'm just going to walk people through exactly where I believe that you should begin, what you should do if these concepts and ideas and methodologies resonate with you. Then they can go and check out our starter kit. They go to BlueprintOS.com/assets, BlueprintOS.com/assets, and they can access the starter kit.
Bradley, while we have time, we wondered if you might have things to talk about that I have not been bright enough to ask you.
A lot of business owners, they initially come to us because they want to scale. And so a lot of times people don't know, we'll ask them, what's the difference in growth and scale? Like, what does that actually, kind of look like? And so we have a unique methodology that we call SCALE, and it's an acronym. And so is this idea of becoming the architect of your business, is it simply a concept? Is it just this idea that you have? We actually believe it is. It's certainly an identity shift, but we've actually also came up with 5 key milestones that actually form the word scale. So I'd love to go over
Please do.
each one of those with you quickly. I'll go over them overall, and then I'll dive a little bit into each one of them. The S in scale stands for sustainable revenue, meaning specifically you do greater than $1 million in annual revenue in your business. The C stands for consistent profitability and year-over-year growth. The A stands for away, taking enough time away from the business. The L stands for leverage. How do you get leverage in the business so you can buy back your time? We specifically think you do that by ensuring that you have an executive assistant. And then E is efficient operations, and you do that by having an operating system. So if I can go over just maybe each one of them just a little bit more. Sustainable revenue, 91% of small businesses never cross $1 million in annual revenue. 96% of small businesses never see their 10th birthday. The odds are stacked against us. So getting your business to $1 million is absolutely a significant milestone. And for the majority of the clients we work with, they're maybe just under that, maybe just have crossed that milestone. And for some people listening to this, they can check that box. The second one, though, is even if you get it to $1 million, you want it to continue to grow, and it needs to be profitable. None of our clients have taken on private equity money or outside investment. They're all bootstrapped. And so it's incredibly imperative that they're not only growing, but they're profitable. And how do we balance the two of those together to make sure it's growing and profitable? Not easy, but can be done. The third one is if the business is doing well financially, over $1 million in revenue, growing and profitable, but you're working all the time, burning yourself out as I was, what good is it? So we need to make sure that you take ample time away from the business. We specifically say 12 weeks. And for somebody listening to this, they may initially go, wow, I don't know about 12 weeks. I'm not so sure I could do that or even want to do that. And I understand. But if you're guided through it, you can see it's more possible than what you realize. Thirdly, it's not a luxury to have an executive assistant. We actually think it's a necessity as a business owner. I used to think Mr. Fancy Pants has got an EA. Now I see it as an absolute necessity and requirement. If you're a small business owner that wants to scale, you have to be able to focus on the things that actually grow the business. And lastly, we've already talked kind of at length at this, you got to put together a set of playbooks that form a comprehensive operating system so that business is efficient and not dependent upon you. So that is our scale methodology: sustainable revenue, consistent growth and profitability, time away, leverage with an executive assistant, and efficient operations through an OS.
You've been watching the Biz News Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@biznews.com. Thanks for watching.